This is College Football Conference Realignment to match the NBA in College Football 26 Dynasty. So I did this a while ago with the NFL. Somebody requested that I would do it with the MLB, but since we're in basketball season, I'm going to do the NBA first. I'll do the MLB when we get closer to baseball season. Essentially what we're doing here is making the divisions like they would be in the NBA and selecting teams from the same state for a team in the NBA. So, for example, Army is going to be one of our Nets teams as they're from New York and they'll be in the conference or in the division with the rest of the other teams from that division, or in the conference with the rest of the teams from that division, so on and so forth. So, for the American, this is our Northeast division. Like I said, Army is a Nets team. We also put Rutgers for the Nets as well because the Nets used to be in New Jersey. So we're going to allow Rutgers to be added in as well. They're both the Nets teams. Boston College and UMass are the Celtics teams. Buffalo is our Raptors team. It gets difficult with the NBA and the MLB because there's Toronto teams. So Buffalo is going to be our Toronto team for the Raptors. And then we've got Syracuse for the Knicks because New York team, they have the same colors as the Knicks, so they're going to be our Knicks team. And then we have Penn State, Pitt, and Temple all for the Sixers. The ACC is our Southeast division. So we have App State, Charlotte, Duke, East Carolina, NC State, UNC, and Wake Forest for the Hornets. We have FIU, Miami, FAU for the Heat, and then we have UCF, Florida State, and USF for the Magic. And then we have Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Georgia Southern, Georgia for the Hawks. Weren't able to put Kennesaw State in here. There's some teams or conferences where we had to make decisions because there's a lot of teams in the particular conference. And then we have Maryland and Navy for the Wizards. The Wizards are one that are in DC. There's no DC teams per se in college football, so we decided to go with Maryland for this one as the representatives for the Wizards. The Big Ten is our Central Division, so we have, again, one Ohio team and a lot of teams from Ohio, so some teams didn't make it. Akron, Bowling Green, Kent State, Ohio State, and Toledo are our Cleveland teams. We have Ball State, Indiana, Notre Dame, and Purdue as our Pacers teams. We have Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Michigan State, and Western Michigan as our Pistons team. I got my Detroit hat on here. And then we have Illinois, Northern Illinois, and Northwestern as our Bulls teams. Wisconsin is our solo Bucks team. The Big 12, this is the Southwest Division. This time we're in the Western Conference. Those are our three Eastern Conferences. This is the Western Conference. Texas is going to be a little bit hard. I'm going to try to do it all off the top of my head. So for the Mavericks, we've got Baylor, SMU, TCU, and North Texas for the Mavericks. For the Rockets, we've got, of course, Houston, A&M, Sam Houston, Rice will be our Rockets teams, and then Texas, UTSA, and Texas State will be our Spurs teams. Now the Spurs now there's two teams that are left out, Tech and UTEP. They're so far away from the rest of the towns in Texas that I figured those would be the two teams that we would leave out because there's a lot of teams in this conference. For the Pelicans, we've got LSU, Louisiana Tech, UL Monroe. For the Grizzlies, we've got Memphis, Middle Tennessee, and Tennessee. And then, Tulane also for the Pelicans. And that's going to be the full conference. Oh, and Vanderbilt is also for Memphis. Okay, that's going to be one of the hardest conferences. That's our full out conference there for the Southwest Conference. Conference USA is one of our non-NBA conferences. We'll come back to that. MAC is also one of our non-NBA conferences. The Mountain West is our Northwest Division. So we've got, this is one of the easier ones. Air Force, Colorado, and Colorado State are the Nuggets. BYU, Utah, and Utah State are the Jazz. Minnesota, of course, is the Timberwolves. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, as well as Tulsa, are the OKC Thunder teams. And then Oregon and Oregon State are our Portland teams. Oklahoma and Oregon are states that won't be represented in any other professional conference, and they just happen to be in the same conference here with the Mountain West being in the Northwest. And then our final division is the Pacific Division, so we had to put it in the Pac-12. This is just California teams and the Suns. So Arizona and Arizona State, of course, representing the Suns. We're going to say Cal and Stanford are representing the Kings. San Jose State and Fresno State are representing the Warriors. UCLA is representing the Clippers, obviously. And then USC and San Diego State are representing the Lakers. And then we have our non-NBA divisions. This is a really hard one to go off the top. So we did our non-NBA divisions. Basically, we took every team that was left over, split them diagonally, or I should say vertically up and down in 4 different quadrants, essentially time zones. Not exactly time zones, but essentially the way the time zones are split up, and put them into conferences. So Conference USA is our Western Division: Boise State, Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico, New Mexico State, UNLV, UTEP, Washington State, Wyoming. Essentially the Mountain West with New Mexico State and the Washington teams included in there. UTEP, I think, is included in there as well. They will eventually be a Mountain West team here. The MAC is obviously the middle of the country. So we've got Arkansas State, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Kansas State, Miami, Ohio, Missouri State, Nebraska, and Texas Tech. Cincinnati, Texas Tech, Miami, Ohio technically all could have teams, but their divisions are already too big. The SEC is our third, so not all the way east, but kind of that third place there. Alabama, Auburn, Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, Kentucky, Louisville, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, South Alabama, Southern Miss, UAB, Western Kentucky, and then finally the Sun Belt: Coastal Carolina, Clemson, Delaware, JMU, Liberty, Marshall, ODU, South Carolina, Troy, UConn, Virginia Tech, and West Virginia. Since this is the only professional league with a team from my home state, the Blazers, we are going to go with the Ducks this time. I guess we could do the MLS at some point, but that video seems like it'd get less click through. But we're going to do the regular things: 3 years, best team, best conference, all those things. We're also going to do the best NBA team based on the teams that are connected to the NBA team at the end of the video. So we'll go through that as well. But we're trying to get to 500 subscribers before the end of the month. We've got a week left. We're at 450 subscribers as I'm making this video. So make sure that you like and subscribe and you're along for the ride when we get to 500. Other than that, let's go to the first CFP poll. The Ducks are 9-0, a great start for the Blazers representing team here. Miami and SMU have a massive matchup coming up here in the top 3. It's a non-conference matchup. We've got the Heat versus the Mavericks. 1 versus 3, the winner definitely takes the number 1 overall seed. Surprisingly, we've got the Nets represented by Rutgers, of all the teams that's representing them, in the top 5. I don't think I've ever seen Rutgers make the playoff, so that's a very surprising thing. Pretty weak conference up there in the American, which is the Northeast Conference, but they are, is it the Atlantic? I don't know exactly what they call it, but they are, it's the Atlantic. It's the Atlantic, the Central, and the Southeast. So it's the Atlantic Conference that they're leading. We have 2 teams out in the Northwest Division that are in the top 5 with Oregon and Oklahoma. Oregon did get the win earlier on in the season by 3 over Oklahoma. Besides BYU, this is a pretty easy conference, so we should be seeing them get a rematch in the conference championship game. Massive matchup between Texas and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's actually the undefeated team of those 2. Texas already has 2 losses. One early on to the Cavs at Ohio State, and then they had a loss in the Red River Shootout against the Thunder. So, and they have a couple tough games here with Vanderbilt being the Grizzlies and Georgia being the Hawks at the end of the season there. So we could see Vanderbilt make the playoff, which I don't think I've seen Vanderbilt make the playoff very often, even though they were one of the better teams in college football this season. We have another top 25 matchup between Duke, who is number 7 in the country, representing the Hornets. They'll face off against Virginia. Biggest surprise really is Rutgers being in the top 5, obviously by far, but Vanderbilt being in the top 13 is not too far behind, because you do see them in the top 25, but they also struggle. I've played as Vanderbilt, just letting them sim, and they get like 2 wins a season. So let's sim to the college football, or to the conference championship games, and see what's going on. As expected, Blazers Thunder in the Mountain West Championship game. In the Northwest Division Championship game, Oregon versus Oklahoma. Oregon is undefeated, 12-0. I would imagine that Oklahoma is 11-1, unless they had a loss from the last time you saw them. But let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on. Did we see that Rutgers had started to fall off? Yeah, Rutgers is not even in their conference championship game. So that was somewhat expected. they maybe got a little bit of a jump on things, but bummer because that would have been cool to see Rutgers up there. ACC championship game, 1 versus 2, Hornets versus Heat. Both teams probably have already clinched a first round bye regardless of the outcome in that game. We've also got the Pennsylvania Bowl in the American. Sixers on Sixers. Penn State's probably in. Pitt needs a win to get in. They might not even be able to get in with the automatic qualifier with the way things are shaking out, but we'll see. We have got the Rockets and Spurs in the Big 12 championship game, A&M versus the Longhorns. The Big 12 had somebody, SMU was one of the leaders in this conference. They must have lost. They lost to Miami, we know that, but what else happened there? Pacers and Cavs in the Big 10 championship game, in the Central championship game, I should say. Indiana's undefeated with a pretty good conference. I'm not exactly sure why they are number 9 in the country, but they should be in either way. A win would not hurt them, of course. These are non-NBA conferences. Looks like we're going to get at least 2 teams in from the, well, for sure 1 team in from the MAC, maybe 2 teams in depending on how this game goes. Like we already saw the Mountain West championship game. This is our Pacific Conference championship game. Probably not going to get anybody in from there. Non-NBA, both conferences look like they might be out. What are we missing in the top 25? Hopefully Rutgers. No, SMU dropped out. Rutgers, who was a top 4 team, lost. They were 7-0. They went 2-3 to end the season. They did have that loss at the end of the season to Penn State, which we were expecting, but they lost to Boston College and they lost to Pitt. Total of 10 points in those 2 losses, then of course getting blown out by Penn State. They could have survived the blowout if they would have had some wins before that, but 9-3 is not going to cut it. Georgia representing the Hawks dropped down. NBA teams, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 NBA teams represented in the top 12. Only Texas Tech, who technically could have represented, I guess, probably the Mavericks, but they didn't. They're too far away. And Nebraska, who doesn't have an NBA team, they are going to face off. One of them might drop out, and we very well could get the Cavs, who are in the national or in their conference championship game against Indiana, or the Mavs. So, what is it? We've got Hornets, Heat, Blazers, Rockets, Thunder, Sixers. This would be the Magic, Pacers, Hawks, and Mavs. No, Spurs. Yeah, so we won't have 2 of the same NBA teams, 2 teams from the same NBA team in the playoff unless something really dramatic happens. I don't even know what that would be. I guess it would be Pitt making it in. That would be the closest thing we have there. Otherwise, we've got all unique NBA teams in the first season. Let's go see what the bracket actually looks like. Jeremiah Smith, who I guess is LeBron in this, or what, Donovan Mitchell for the Cavs. Yeah, probably more akin to like a young LeBron, but I guess Donovan Mitchell or Evan Mobley of today. 99 catches, 22 touchdown receptions, Heisman Trophy winning wide receiver in the first season. The Ducks did end up making the national championship game. It'll be the college football playoff. It'll be a rematch of the semifinal from this year, Oregon versus Indiana. This time it's the Blazers versus the Pacers in the first round. If only we could change the playoff around and we could make it like the NBA playoff. Wouldn't that be fun? Upgrade your game in 2027. Upgrade your game in 2027 college football. It's long enough that we haven't been able to customize the playoff. That's a major thing in college football right now. Allow us to customize the Dynasty so much more than it is right now. There has to be so much more customization to Dynasty for next season. I'm going to put out a short later on this week telling all the things that I think need to be upgraded, and then I'll do a long video later on. Anyway, let's look at our bracket here. So we have Miami, who ended up winning the Southeastern Division representing the Heat. They will host, of course, the Orange Bowl. We've got the Thunder, Oklahoma, who won the Northwest Division. They will host the Cotton Bowl. A&M representing the Rockets out of the Southwest Division. They will host the Sugar Bowl. And then Duke, who's representing the Hornets, who lost to Miami in the Southwest or Southeast Championship game. They still got a first round bye. They will be in the Rose Bowl. Okay, in the first round, we've got a rematch of the first round from 2024. Penn State hosting SMU. This time, it's the Sixers hosting the Mavs. SMU got lucky and jumped up. So there was a couple teams that ended up losing their way out, including, I could see Texas for sure. I don't know who the other team was, but that is the Sixers hosting the Mavs in the first round. Winner takes on the Hornets in the Rose Bowl. Then we've got the Magic hosting the Hawks in the first round. 8 versus 9, Florida, Georgia. Rivalry, world's largest outdoor cocktail party, with the winner taking on Miami in the second round. So it's the Magic and the Heat, with the winner taking on Magic and the Hawks, the winner taking on the Heat in the second round. Then, like we mentioned, Blazers hosting the Pacers. Winner takes on the Rockets in the next round. Then we've got a non-NBA team, our only non-NBA team that makes it in, Texas Tech. So Georgia was the other team that dropped out. Or not Georgia. Nebraska was the other team that dropped out. So that means that non-NBA Texas Tech will be hosting the Cavs in the first round with Heisman Trophy winner Jeremiah Smith, a.k.a. LeBron, a.k.a. Donovan Mitchell. Winner takes on the Thunder in the Cotton Bowl. Okay. From the same divisions, we have Oregon, Oklahoma out of the Northwest Conference. That is 2 teams there. Florida and Georgia. Hawks, Heat. So we actually have 4 teams from down there. So we have the Hawks with Georgia, the Magic with Florida, the Heat with Miami, the Hornets with Duke. That's 4 teams out of that division that are represented. We then have 2 teams out of the Southwest, with A&M representing the Rockets and SMU representing the Mavs. We have 2 teams out of the Central, the Pacers and the Cavs, represented by Ohio State and Indiana. And then 1 team out of the American, which is the Penn State, representing the Sixers. The Ducks get the win in the first round. Blazers over the Pacers. They, Mateo Angole, of course, one of the dominant forces in the game. It will be Blazers Rockets in the Sugar Bowl, 3 versus 6, A&M versus Oregon. These videos are so hard to keep straight in my head with all the different teams that are involved. Okay, who else passed through? Okay, so the Sixers get the win over the Mavs, 28-27, last second buzzer beater for the Sixers. They will face off against the Hornets in the Rose Bowl. The Hawks get the win over the Magic. They will take on the Heat in another in-division matchup. We could get another in-division matchup with Duke. If Duke can get the win, they will face off against another Southeast Division opponent. The Blazers get the win over the Pacers, 40-37. They will take on the Rockets in the Sugar Bowl, and then their non-NBA team, Texas Tech, gets the win over the Cavs, 38-24. They'll take on the Thunder. So we could get 2 divisional matchups in the semifinal if Oregon, Oklahoma win, and if Duke wins, we will get 2 divisional matchups in the semifinals. We are denied the divisional matchups. We do get a Texas Bowl with A&M representing the Rockets getting the win over the Blazers, being represented by the Ducks, and Texas Tech, the non-NBA team, getting the win over Oklahoma, representing the Thunder. So it's A&M, Texas Tech, Rockets versus non-NBA team. I don't know what. I was going to try to do the G League, but that's too damn hard. I think that most of the G League teams now are in the same city or at least the same state as their main team. It's not like back in the day, so wouldn't have really made that much sense anyway, but it's A&M versus Texas Tech in the Fiesta Bowl, Rockets versus non-NBA. Then the Sixers get another win, 2 points. They've won by a total of 3 points. Last second buzzer beaters are getting them through. They beat the Hornets, represented by Duke. They will move on to face off against Miami, who's obviously representing the Heat. The Miami won 38-17 over the Hawks in the quarterfinal. So it's Sixers, Heat in the semifinal, and Rockets against non-NBA team. At least it's East versus West that we're going to get in the national championship, which is pretty good if you ask me. I was really hoping A&M would get the win there. I just kind of underrated them in one of the shorts that I did, and I thought that maybe they could prove me wrong here. Nope, they end up getting the loss, 38-10 over by Texas Tech over A&M. Non-NBA team over the Rockets. They will take on the Sixers, who are on a destiny run here, get another single-digit win over Miami. Sixers over the Heat, 35-30. So it's the Sixers versus Texas Tech in Miami for the national championship in year 1. And in overtime, the Sixers get another 1-point win. They win the national championship in year 1 by a total of 11 points. They got the overtime win here. Looks like Texas Tech kicked a field goal to start, and they went down and scored a touchdown to end up winning the game. Didn't even need to go for the extra point there. They get the win 41-38. A total of 11 points was the margin of victory in the playoffs. They're winning 4 straight games and get the first national championship of the video, giving not only Penn State, not only the Sixers, but the Atlantic Division their first win of the video, putting them in the lead in everything. Let's go to next year. All right, so we have a similar kind of lineup in the second year, except it looks like the Sixers might be the best team in the NBA in college football. We've got Pitt and Penn State both in the top 8 here, both representing the Sixers. Penn State, of course, is our defending national champion. Pitt was just 1 win away from making the playoff last year, so the Sixers might be the dominant team of this sim. But we have Miami back at the top of the country. They were the number 1 team going into the playoff last year. They ended up losing by 5 in the semifinal to Penn State. Didn't get the Heat into the national championship game, but they're back towards the top. All 3 of these teams representing the same division, the Southeast Division. Heat, Hawks, Magic. Oregon, representing the Blazers, is back in the top 5 as they were last year up until the Pac-12 Northwest Conference championship game when they lost to Oklahoma, representing the Thunder. Texas was a playoff team all the way up until their conference championship game last year, in which they lost out. They are representing the Spurs, one of the NBA teams that didn't make it last season. All of the NBA teams that are represented here did make it last season, aside from the Lakers, who are in the top 12 by virtue of USC's 8-0 start. The Pac-12 is a pretty weak conference with the way the Pacific Division is set up. It's just California and Arizona teams, but they do have some tough games at the end of the season at UCLA, representing the Clippers, and against Notre Dame, who will be representing the Pacers. So we'll see if USC can carry their way through to the playoffs at the end of the season. Alabama is our lone non-NBA team in the top 12 currently. They are 8-0. Let's see what they have left in the season. Game against Ole Miss is the only ranked team. Kentucky has been pretty good so far with this SEC setup, but nothing super strange. So we could see Alabama as our non-NBA team. Texas Tech was our non-NBA team from last year. They're currently on the outside looking in. We have TCU representing the Mavs, LSU representing the Pelicans, Ohio State representing the Cavs, Maryland representing the Wizards, Notre Dame, like we talked about, the Pacers, BYU representing the Jazz, Tulane representing the Pelicans. We've got a couple teams that are from non-playoff NBA teams from last season, but like I mentioned, the only 2 teams that are in that weren't represented from last season are Texas representing the Spurs and USC representing the Lakers. Let's see if that stays true. Let's send them to the college football or to the conference championship games. The Ducks are number 7 in the country, and they missed out on the conference championship game, which is very interesting to say the least. So we have Oklahoma back in the conference championship game from last season. They're representing the Thunder. They made it to the playoff last season, ended up losing their first game. They're facing off against BYU representing the Jazz in the conference championship game. Looks like Oklahoma would need to win for a team from this to get in, but Oregon, representing the Blazers, should be in as their number 7 in the country. We have the Clippers and the Lakers fighting for a playoff spot between USC and UCLA, both 11 and 12. That's a very interesting one. Chris Peterson Bowl up here doesn't really matter to the playoffs, but Chris Peterson Bowl up there. We've got the Spurs and the Mavs battling 5 and 6. Looks like both teams are in the playoff, but still an interesting matchup there. Could be for a first-round bye. Another Pennsylvania Bowl like we had last season. Last year, Penn State got the win, knocked Pitt out of the playoff. We could very well see both of them representing the Sixers in this season. Again, the Sixers could clinch best NBA team in the video so far. Alabama could be our non-NBA representative this year. Georgia and Miami, Hawks versus Heat in the ACC championship game. So far, the Southeast Conference has been the strongest top to bottom. They had 2 bye teams last year with 2 additional teams. Looks like it might get 2 teams with the bye this year as well. And then we've got the Pacers versus the Bucks in the Big Ten championship game. Doesn't look like that's going to affect the college football playoff. But let's see what the top 25 is missing. We know at least one team, Oregon, is in. That's not in there. Florida, another one of that team from the Southeast. They were 1, 2, 3 when we saw them before. Order has changed around a little bit, but they all stay 1, 2, 3 there. We've got a new NBA team in this year for the first time. The Pelicans will make it in with LSU. We should see at least 3 new teams, Spurs, Pelicans, and either the Lakers or the Clippers will be in. And if one of these teams ends up dropping out, we could also see the Wizards make it in for the first time, being represented by Maryland. But let's see what the results are, and let's sim to the playoff bracket. Devin Dampier has been winning the Heisman pretty regularly in our videos. This time he wins it as the quarterback for Texas. I think the Texas end up making the playoff. Not a great Heisman season, but I think he does a lot more on the ground. So the Clippers did end up making it through UCLA. So that means that we have Blazers, Clippers in the first round. This is the second year in a row that the Ducks are the 6th seed, representing the Blazers in the first round. This time they will face off against the Clippers, represented by UCLA, an old school Pac-12 matchup if we're not talking NBA. Who else ended up making it? Did the Lakers end up falling out with USC? Yes, they did. Penn State, who was representing the Sixers last year and was the first round, the 5 seed in the first round, they will be the 5 seed again. This time they're facing off against the Wizards, who are not a division opponent. They are a conference opponent, but not a division opponent. So it's Penn State versus Maryland. That is Sixers versus Wizards in the first round. Winner takes on Miami, who's representing the Heat in the Cotton Bowl. Then we have the Pelicans versus the Mavs in a conference matchup. LSU versus SMU, hosted by LSU. Winner will take on Georgia, the number 1 overall seed, undefeated team representing the Hawks in the Orange Bowl. Then we have the 6-11, like we talked about, Blazers, Clippers. Winner goes on to take on Florida, who is the Magic. Then we have our non-NBA team, Alabama, the 10 seed, facing off against Pitt, who is our second team representing the Sixers. So the Sixers not only are the first team to win the national championship, they also are the first team to have 2 teams representing them in the playoffs in the second round. They only have 3 teams total representing them, unlike some teams that have 5, 6, 7 teams representing them, hint, hint, the Cavs. But Pitt makes it in this year. They will face off against Alabama. Winner takes on Texas, who's representing the Spurs. First time the Spurs get in. So the Spurs, the Clippers, and the Pelicans and the Wizards are our new teams, 4 new teams this season from last year. We have the Blazers, the Sixers, Magic, Hawks, Heat, Mavs, all represented last season. So 6 teams in from last season and 4 new NBA teams in, and then 1 non-NBA team that wasn't in last year. Blazers are victorious in the first round yet again, this time over the Clippers. They will go on to face off against the Gators, who are, of course, representing the Magic. That is an East-West matchup there, about as far as you can go across the country, Oregon to Florida. Who else won in the first round? Looks like the Sixers keep their streak alive, at least on one side of it. Penn State gets another single-digit win in the playoffs. That's their 5th straight win in the playoffs, 5th straight time they've won by single digits. They get the win 34-31 over Maryland, who is representing the Wizards. Penn State, representing the Sixers, will take on the Heat in the Cotton Bowl, Miami versus Penn State. On the bottom, our non-NBA team gets another win. Last year, our non-NBA team made it all the way to the national championship game with Texas Tech. Can Alabama replicate that? They are currently 14-0 after beating Pitt, who is representing the Sixers, 35-21. Alabama will now take on Texas, who's representing the Spurs in the Peach Bowl. Oregon, like we talked about, got the win 45-17. Blazers over the Clippers. Oregon will face off against Florida. That is Blazers versus Magic in the second round there. And then finally, LSU, who was representing the Pelicans, gets the win over SMU, representing the Mavs. So it's Pelicans, Hawks, teams that have made some really stupid trades amongst themselves over the last couple seasons. They will face off in the Orange Bowl. We know that this is not reality because the Hawks and the Pelicans are not facing off in the playoffs, or not even making the playoffs anytime soon. The Blazers fall short in the playoffs in the second round yet again. Florida, representing the Magic, get the win 38-17. They'll move on to face off against our non-NBA team, Alabama, who is 15-0. Both teams undefeated going into the game in the Rose Bowl. Alabama got the win over Texas, representing the Spurs, 27-24, 3 versus 10 in the semifinal. The Sixers run is finished. Another one-score game for them in the playoffs. This time, they're on the wrong side of it. The Heat get the win over Penn State, over the Sixers, 24-17. They will move on to the semifinal, where they will take on the Pelicans. The first time that they've made it into the semifinal and into the playoffs at all this time. They get the win over the number 1 seed, Pelicans over the Hawks. So it's Heat, Hawks, and Magic, non-NBA team in the semifinal. And yet again, we will have a non-NBA team in the national championship game. Alabama gets the win 29-26 over Florida. over the Magic. They will take on LSU, who's representing the Pelicans, after they get the win 27-21 over the Miami Heat team. Hurricanes being represented by the Heat. Miami loses in the semifinal for the second year in a row. They last year fell short to Penn State. They get the revenge this year, but they end up falling short again in the semifinal. LSU and Alabama is the national championship game. Pelicans versus the non-NBA team. Alabama's looking for a 17-0 season in Vegas. Can LSU keep the NBA on top for the second straight season? Another close one in the national championship. This time, LSU gets the win 45-42. I believe this one was in regulation. Yeah, we didn't go to overtime in this one, unlike last year. Alabama loses in the national championship game, loses their 17-0 season. The NBA reigns supreme. LSU, representing the Pelicans, gets the win 45-42. So it is the Sixers in the first year, the Pelicans in the second year. The Sixers are really, really close to wrapping this thing up. They've had 3 total appearances in the playoffs so far. Nobody else has more than 2. And they have a national championship game. And the other team that won the national championship game only has 1 appearance so far. Now, there are quite a few teams representing Tulane, or representing the Pelicans, but they all have to play in the same division. And that division is really, really tough. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get any repeats this year. And the Atlantic division that Penn State and Pitt, all the Sixers teams are a part of, is a really easy division. So they might have that domination by virtue of just dominating the conference, but we'll have to end up seeing what happens in the end. The Blazers have made it twice in a row, so maybe they have something to say at the end of this. The Heat have made it twice in a row. They have a couple teams representing them, so maybe they have something to say about it in the end. Hawks as well have a couple teams representative, and they have made it twice in a row. And the Magic could be in that conversation as well, as they have been in twice in a row, and they have a couple teams representing them, including Florida and Florida State, which are 2 teams that could very well make the playoffs in the final season. But let's see what happens. Just a quick look at the preseason Heisman rankings. Bryce Underwood has gone to Pitt, so I think the Sixers might have just wrapped this up. We do have De'Corian Moore and Dante Moore both back at Oregon, so maybe the Blazers can get this thing taken care of at the end, but I mean, it's looking rough for the rest of the NBA. Here we are in our final season, and we see a lot of the similar teams that we had last year. One thing that just happened was Oklahoma got a big conference win over Oregon, Thunder over the Blazers, so we've got those 2 teams in the top 5. It was a 2 versus 3 matchup, I want to say, last week, and Oklahoma ended up getting that win there. But everybody else that we see in the top 10 made it in. Top 11 made it into the playoff last season. Heat, Miami, yet again at the top of the bricks there. They are taking on North Carolina in a top 12 matchup. Big game for North Carolina here. We have yet to see them in the playoff. They had an early season loss to Florida. They did get that win over Maryland and the Wizards in a conference matchup. This is another conference matchup between the Wizards and the Heat here. They got another matchup against Georgia at the end of the season. The ACC is extremely tough. The Southeast Conference, extremely tough. And they've got a couple teams right around the edge there. Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida, all representing NBA teams looking to get in. USC, who lost in the Pacific Championship game last year, representing the Lakers. They lost to UCLA, representing the Clippers. They had a rough early season loss against Nevada. And they're going to have an end-of-the-season game against UCLA again. So it's going to be Lakers and Clippers in the Pacific Conference at the end of the season again. Alabama was our non-NBA team last year. They made it to the NBA Finals. We've had that the first 2 seasons. Nobody really that new up towards the top. Clemson, I guess, but they're not really up in there. Wisconsin representing the Bucks could be up in there, but the Big Ten has actually struggled. The Central Conference has struggled in this sim, even though they have a lot of good teams there. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but they have struggled so far. Let's go to the conference championship games and see what's actually going down. All right, we have a couple rematches in our conference championship game. One is not a true rematch for college football team, but it is an NBA team rematch. That is Oregon representing the Blazers and Oklahoma State representing the Thunder. We had Oregon, Oklahoma in the first season. This year it's Oklahoma State. USC and Arizona State, the Lakers versus the Suns. We thought it was going to be UCLA. They were doing pretty good in the season, but they didn't end up doing it at the end, so that is a little rough. We also have Boise State and Washington, who are the 2 representatives from the first season. I guess this is like the Idaho Stampede versus the Sonics, but not actual NBA teams, so they are out. LSU is our defending national champion. They look like they're running up towards the top again this year. They're going to face off against the Mavs, who I think was the first round last year, 8 versus 9. LSU won from the 8th seed. So this time they're playing in the conference championship game, Pelicans, Mavs. Alabama, who was our runner-up last year, our non-NBA team, they are 12-0. Looks like they're going to make the playoff yet again. And for the third straight season, we have the all-Pennsylvania matchup in the American Championship game, Sixers on Sixers. The Sixers basically have it wrapped up as the best NBA team so far. I think that the Southeast Conference, which is this ACC down here, probably is the best division so far, best conference so far. And the Heat still have a chance to kind of take that crown as the best team. We'll see what actually happens. What are we missing from the top 25, though? We are going to have, one thing I saw, we are going to have two teams from outside of the NBA, Alabama and Nebraska, both make it in. The Lakers should make it in this year after missing it out last season. The Thunder should be back in after missing out this last season. And we'll see, but the Hawks should be back in for the third straight season, but we'll see. Maybe Clemson jumps in with that win in their conference championship game. Still a lot to figure out, but we have no new teams. Well, the Lakers would be our only new team from the NBA that would make it in this season, so we kind of have a pretty set schedule from the way these conferences were set up. But let's see what the bracket actually looks like in our final season. Foreshadowing is a bitch. Bryce Underwood does end up winning the Heisman Trophy, so that is now at least four, probably 5 playoff appearances for the Sixers and a Heisman Trophy and a national championship. The Sixers absolutely locked it down. They are the best NBA team for sure. We got defensive end of the year by this white dude. John Henry Daly is the whitest name you could possibly come up with. This dude ends up winning defensive end of the year for the Ducks, for the Blazers. He also wins the Lombardi Award. Great season for John Henry Daly. Let's look at what the bracket actually ends up looking like. So, again, we have Penn State and Pitt both making it. So that's 5 appearances total for the Sixers, a national championship and a Heisman Trophy before we even start this final appearance. The Magic will face off against the Sixers in the first round with the winner taking on the Blazers. We have 2 of our 3 non-NBA teams, Nebraska and Clemson, playing in the first round, the winner taking on the Sixers, not defending national champion, but first-year national champion, Penn State, who has a run of 6 straight single-digit playoff games. We'll see if they keep that alive in that second-round matchup. We have the Lakers, who is our only new NBA team in this year. They're facing off against the Hawks in the first round. The winner will face off against our defending national champion, LSU, who's representing the Pelicans. Then we have the Thunder back in for the first time since the first season, against Alabama, who was our defending national champion last year, and our third non-NBA team this year. Winner will take on Miami, representing the Heat. So, teams that have made it in 3 straight seasons: Florida, Oregon, Georgia, Miami, Penn State, have all made it in 3 straight seasons. That's 5 teams. USC is in for their first time. Clemson and Nebraska are in for their first time. That also is the Lakers' first time in. Pittsburgh and Alabama are in for their second straight time. Oklahoma is in for their second time in the video. That's the 5th appearance for the Sixers on Pitt's side and the 2nd appearance for the Thunder on the Sooners side. So, the Sixers essentially have this thing wrapped up as far as the best NBA team in the video. But best team in the video, if we're just talking individual college football team, is still alive. All 4 of the teams that they buy in the first round are alive for best team in the video, assuming they win a national championship. LSU has to win a national championship to get that because Penn State is in the lead, being that they have won 3, or they've been in the playoff 3 straight times. Oregon and Miami have both been in the playoff 3 straight times. They don't have a national championship. So Penn State is the leader in the clubhouse, and if any of those teams or Florida or Georgia don't win the national championship this time, it will be Penn State who gets the best team in the video as well as the best NBA team in the video. No other teams could probably tie Penn State. Best conference in the video at this point, though, is the Southeast Conference if they can get a win in this final portion or final playoff of the video. Other than that, it probably goes to the Atlantic Division because they've had consistent appearances and they have the national championship. LSU is out of the Southwest Division, and they haven't had as many consistent appearances as the Penn State, Pittsburgh, Atlantic Division has. So that means that they would get not just best team in the video, not just best conference in the video, but best NBA team in the video as well. So we have to stop Penn State and Pitt from winning it this season. Let's see what happens. Pitt gets the win in the first round as the 12th seed. They will take on the Ducks in the second round. So it's Blazers, Sixers in the Rose Bowl. Blazers have to do some work here to help out in stopping the Sixers from taking everything. Pitt got the win 43-21 over the Gators, representing the Magic, so they move on to the second round. Nebraska is the team that will be have the other side of the Sixers in hand. We could get a Sixers on Sixers matchup, which would actually end up being the fourth time that we've seen Penn State and Pitt play in a game that we've observed. We know that they've played additional games as well because they only had 9 teams in their conference. So this is a big rivalry, all Pennsylvania matchup. The 3-time American Championship game could be the semifinal if we don't have some other teams step up here. Lakers get the win over the Hawks in the first round, 30-28. That is Lakers, Pelicans in the Sugar Bowl. LSU is essentially getting a home game there in the second round. Oklahoma gets a win for the Thunder, their first playoff win in the video so far. They get it over Alabama, our defending runner-up. And our non-NBA team, one of our non-NBA teams, we have 2 non-NBA teams lose in the first round here. Only one of them end up winning. Oklahoma will face off against Miami. That's Thunder versus Heat in the second round. So again, everything stays the same. We only have 4 teams, 5 teams. Yeah, only 4 teams that could be best team in the video, with Florida and Georgia losing. Those are the 4 top seeds, 1, 2, 3, 4, Penn State, Miami, LSU, Oregon. Each of those teams have to win aside from Penn State. Penn State could get it without winning. And again, we have to have some movement from Oregon and Nebraska here in this quarterfinal. Otherwise, the Sixers are going to get everything. Conference, division, best college football team, all the things for this video. Nebraska does the job. They keep the streak alive for Penn State as well. That was 7 playoff games that we watched Penn State play in this video. Each and every one of them was by single digits. The biggest victory or biggest margin of victory by either team in a Penn State game in the playoff was 7 last year against Alabama when they lost. No, last year against Miami when they lost in the second round against Miami. So that is an incredible run by Penn State, but they end up losing. Pitt, on the other hand, does take care of business over Oregon. Oregon will not be best team in the video. They had a chance if they could win out. They could not. Blazers, I think they went like 2-2 in the playoffs this year, or in this video. But it will be Pitt versus Nebraska, Sixers versus a non-NBA team in the semifinal. Nebraska really needs to get the win there, or, yeah, I think with Pitt's win there, the Atlantic takes the best conference in the video. Sixers already had the best team in the video, but we do have best NBA team, our best college football team still alive in the bottom, with Miami getting the win 47-45 over Oklahoma, Heat over the Thunder. They will take on the Lakers, who make it to the semifinal in their first appearance. They get a huge win, 44-7 over LSU in what should have been the 2003 National Championship game. Anyway, Miami versus USC in the Cotton Bowl. 2 NBA teams, Lakers and Heat. Classic matchup for through the 2000s. Miami has a chance to take best team in the video, or at least tie for best team in the video. I still think with the way that Penn State has played, Miami, this is Miami's 3rd straight semifinal. Penn State lost out in the semifinal. They won the first one, and then they lost in the second round the last 2. So yes, if Miami wins it, they will take the best team in the video for college football. That's the only thing that's still alive. The Atlantic Division and the Sixers have taken best NBA team and best conference so far, but Miami has best team in the video still alive. They just need to win 2 more games against USC and the winner of the 8-12 matchup. They should be the favorite in both of those. Can they do it? And they end up falling short. They win by 2 in the first round. In the first game, they lose by 2. In the next game, it's Lakers, Sixers in the championship, 6 versus 12, USC, Pitt. Pitt gets another big win. They won by 22, 12, and by 17 in the playoffs so far. Basically the opposite of what Penn State has done. They now look for the Sixers' second national championship of the video. their first national championship of the video, and the Atlantic Division's second national championship of the video. They face off against USC, who's in their first playoffs representing the Lakers. They lost out last season by losing to the Clippers at the end of the season, UCLA. This year, they might have the victory in them. Let's see, 6 versus 12 for the final game. USC pulls off what could be considered an upset. I don't know necessarily that it is, but they get the win 22-21. The Sixers are still by far the best team in the video. 2 national championship appearances, a Heisman Trophy winner, 5 different appearances in the playoffs. Only Pitt in the first year was a team that missed it, and then, of course, Temple all 3 seasons. But of the 9 potential appearances they could have had in the playoffs through this entire video, they got 5 of them. They got to the national championship twice and got a Heisman Trophy winner. And when they lost by a total of 2 points total in this national championship. I think Pitt lost by a little bit more last year, but Penn State lost by a total of 8 points in their 2 games. Total overall, an incredible run by Pitt and Penn State as the Sixers. USC does get the win in the final one. They get the win for the Lakers. So the Lakers, the Pelicans, and the Sixers are the 3 NBA teams that got a championship in our video. Best team overall is Penn State, best NBA team is the Sixers, and best conference is the Atlantic Division. I just double-checked my NFL video because I wanted to wrap things all the way up. The Jaguars were the best team in the NFL video. Florida got back-to-back championships at the end of that season, so they got the best team in the video there, and they also had the best NFL team with the Jags. So the Jags and the Sixers are the best teams in the NBA and the NFL according to our alignments in college football 26. Next time, when we do this kind of video again, it'll be the MLB, but we'll check you tomorrow.